Okay. גם איתה בעץ חיים. So like 8 lines, 9 lines down. גם איתה בעץ חיים. It's in the middle of...
Yeah.
שאתה מה מברר בן. So this is a little complex. Oh, what it means is that as it is now, I'm going to explain this in a minute. That by the Arizal, the four levels of Yud K Vav K are also represented by 4 fillings. Ab, Sag, Ma, Ban. We learned this. The values are 72, 63, 45, and 52. So the story now is that the new name Ma, there was an old name Ma, an old 45, and that shattered and broke. And 52 also broke. So a new name Ma came out of the eyes, out of the forehead. The old one was out of the eyes. It came out of the forehead. It means that in the forehead there's lights of will and determination. It's a keter. There's a keter in the forehead. And so that comes out and it rectifies, it rebuilds the 52. Now in different terms, the way you would say it is that Za, which is 45, meaning Tiferes, rebuilds Malchus. And 52 is Malchus. So that's the simplest thing I can say. So it's like the compassion rebuilds the kingdom. That you had a kingdom that shattered, and to rebuild it, you need a lot of compassion. So there's all kinds of ways that this was explained over the years. One of the ways, simplest ways to understand it, is that they tried to build a kingdom based on strict laws, but there was no compassion in it. It says, sages say, Al-Machal V'Yerushalayim, Al-Shedanu Ba'din Torah. Because why was it destroyed? Because they tried it, meaning they ran it according to the strict letter of the law. You say, why is that bad?
It's like a word.
Because it's too strict. So that type of strictness in the end, you can't uphold anything. So there has to be some compassion in the whole system. So the sages explain that because they were strict, because you should be strict with the letter of the law. He said, no, because they only had strictness, they only had the might. And they had to include also compassion. They should have done also that sometimes they have to be lenient. So there have to be laws. You can't run a society without laws. It's not going to work at all. But the laws have to have a measure of human compassion in them. So the judge, you can't do things. It takes time to understand this. But in the end, after your system falls apart, then you understand that the problem was that I was too strict. And it's the same thing in any place. It doesn't matter. That's all I'll say. So you have to have this compassion. So compassion has to fix the kingdom. It has to rebuild it. But it means again that there's laws. There have to be laws. There's no laws. There's no kingdom at all. But the laws have to have an opening there so that the judge can be compassionate. So that's the way things are now. That's one example of explaining what this means. That Ma is rebuilding Ba. ולעתיד לבוא, כשיתברר מבחינת בן, אז יהיה אשת חי לתר את בעלה. But in the future, when Ban, meaning Malchus, is rebuilt, then it will be a crown over its husband, meaning Ban will go and rise up higher than Ma. And the 52 will rise higher than the 45. So here you have another thing that's always many times explained here. It's like the relationship between the male and the female. That right now, the male has to rectify the female. What does he give her? He gives her compassion. It's another way of saying the same thing. It's saying that the husband's duty is to give his wife a feeling that everything's okay. to give her compassion, to give her the ability not to act like according to the. It's like if he gives her a budget, it's not a good thing. There has to be a budget, but there also has to be a feeling that if I overspend, or even by a lot, not to get too upset. The same thing, everything in the house. Everything has to be, the woman has a feeling that the house has to run like a tight ship. There's women who can't even run their house, but they still feel that way. And they're very, very upset at themselves that it doesn't run the way they wanted it to. So that's the teva of the woman in the house. She wants everything to be a certain way. You can also have that the man is that way, because sometimes it's the husband who's like that, and he has to find compassion somewhere else. But the point of compassion is there has to be leniency in this. What does leniency mean? So if something breaks, it's the husband's duty to tell his wife, it's okay, we'll buy another one. Like not to feel that everything is falling apart because of this. So that's adding the compassion into the system. And once she's rectified, and she can humor herself, let's call it. Then she rises higher than him. And that's called כי השמירה הוא בבחינת סג, כולו סג יחדיו, והיינו בבחינת בן שבסג. It says the whole break, the whole shattering of the vessels, the kingdom that shattered, this was all in the name Sag. This was all in the second name, the name that corresponds to understanding. The Ban Shabasag, it's like the Malchus of Sag. ולעתיד לבוא, כשהתברר שם Sag, and that's called כולו סג יחדיו. Sag is the word for sigim also. It means the impurities in the gold. So those impurities, they break the whole thing. That's why the gold shatters. That's why anything that's made out of precious metal will shatter, because of the impurities. But finally, when sag is removed or refined fully, including the malchus of sag, then comes out of it a new measure of sag. Sag becomes the new neima. It becomes a whole new thing. וביאור העניין, כי מבחינת מע"מ ורבוע האור נמשך מבחינת כלי, כמו משה ואנחנו מה? מבחינת ביטול בתכלית. So here he gives a third explanation. That ma, that refines everything, that fixes, that corrects the ban, that's like Moshe Rabbeinu's, this is in Chabad, that's the biggest deal. This is what we talked about yesterday. In Chabad, the meaning of ma is always bittul. It's not just compassion, it's bittul, ma. Why? It's koach ma. So even though ma corresponds to tiferes, but the power itself to have compassion is the power of bittul. And so that's what we talked about yesterday, that every seichel, every tzenim that you look at, you have to turn it into a way of nullifying before Hashem. Every understanding that a person has, whatever he's studying, especially when he's learning Torah, it should, in the end, so what's the takeaway message? The takeaway message is I have a new way of nullifying before Hashem. It's the end, the purpose of all my understanding is to stand more null before Hashem. That's what it means. That Moshe Rabbeinu, he says, "V'nachnu ma," we are like nothing. B'chinat bitul b'tochlit. V'af al pi chen haya b'guf. Nonetheless, even though he had this tremendous nullification before Hashem, he was in a physical body. Normally, only the angels can reach such a nullification before Hashem. He was in a physical body, he was able to do that. V'afshu b'chinat Abba, haynu rak b'chinat achlayim kapad kasag imatria Moshe. And this was all, even though Moshe Rabbeinu is only the backside of the nullification. He's not the full nullification. How do we see that? That his name, which is equal to 345, is equal to two fillings, which the Arizal calls achovayim. They're called the backside. It's a way of filling the letters. That equals 184 and 161, which together equal 345. So Moshe Rabbeinu's names are from the backside of Chochmah, of wisdom. Wisdom is Yud Kei Vav Kei, and Bina is Aleph Kei Yud Hei. Okay. It's a little bit of Kabbalah, but basically what he's saying is that in the end, there's more to it. There will be more to it than just gaining nullification. And the same thing, all that Moshe Rabbeinu brought, the entire Torah, meaning the way we understand the Torah now, that's called the backside of wisdom. It's called Novlot Chokhmah. Novlot Chokhmah means it's the trickle that comes down from wisdom. That all we understand now in the Torah doesn't change. It'll still be the same Torah, but the understanding that the Mashiach will teach in the Torah will be such that everything that we've learned until now is just like a trickle. It's a novlot. It's like something that hangs down. It's like fruit that hangs down. It's low-hanging fruit from the Torah. Meaning, nothing will change. Still the same fruit. It's still the same laws. Everything is the same. But the understanding that you gain in it is much, much, much higher. So usually the way this was said is that you'll understand the meaning behind it. Why is it that the Torah says to do this and the Torah says to do that? What is the meaning behind these things? It doesn't mean that it takes away anything. It doesn't take away anything. Low-hanging fruit is still fruit. It's still part of the tree. It just means that our ability to understand the Torah is very limited. And another thing that's explained is that we'll come to understand how everything in the world is created from Torah, which we don't understand now. We don't have an understanding now how the sun is created from the Torah. We don't understand astrophysics from the Torah. You can't. But in the future you'll be able to. There's some kind of language uncovered in it that we don't see it now that will do that also. פירוש הנמשך מבחינת מוחין דאבא למילותיו שיהיה תורה כשר או פסול. Meaning that the low-hanging fruit is to only explain things by kasher and pasul. Meaning it's what we saw a long time ago in the Yeris HaKodesh Kafav, that Kafei, I think, that in today's world the Torah is interpreted only legally. So we're already beyond that. Right? That's why this is called the Torah of Mashiach. That's why Chassidus is the Torah of Mashiach. It's not some future thing that will be revealed. What he's doing here is he's already teaching us from the Torah of Mashiach, because he's explaining the Torah in a completely different way. It's not negating in any way, right? The Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, wrote the Shulchan Aruch. He wrote his own Shulchan Aruch. He's the greatest genius in Halacha. Halacha didn't change one iota. But what we're learning here is a lot more words here than there is in his Shulchan Aruch. He spent a lot of time also on explaining the deeper meanings of the Torah. So that's already revealing something higher. That's going beyond kasher or puzzle. Something is kosher or it's blemish. ואמש כתוב בדיבור המתחיל לשמיים כיסי, in the beginning of Torah or. כמו כן, מבחינת משה היה לו אהבה ויראה במידות, רק שהיו נמשכים מבחינת מוחין, פירוש שהיה אהבה ויראה שלו מבחינת ביטול בתכלית, מבחינת האבא, מבחינת אחוריים. So Moshe Rabbeinu, he also had midos, but his midos came only out of his mind, meaning his composure, his character. It was created entirely from his mind. But in the future, what will happen? It didn't come from Ekia. It didn't come from the mother principle. It all came from Bittul. But Ima has excitement. And that's the whole thing of it. By the Alter Rebbe, there was no you didn't come into understanding from excitement. Everything was very, very cerebral. It was very, but it wasn't like the mother. The mother principle is simcha. It's joy. It's poetz geder. It's something completely different. From there, the Torah didn't come. It couldn't come yet. וכמו ההפרש שבין שבת ליום טוב, שיום טוב הוא בבחינת שמחה, ושבת הוא בבחינת עונג, נדע בקודש, מילה בגרמי, כמו שכתוב בפרשת אמור. וכן היה אהבה ויראה של משה וביקש הריני נא את קודך וקדוש יראה אין סוף שלו מבחינת כלי. So what is this? What happens? That the Ein Sof, the crown itself, is revealed in the mother principle more than it's revealed in the father principle, meaning in Chokhmah, in Bittul, in wisdom. And that, Moshe Rabbeinu, that's what Moshe Rabbeinu said, I want to see your front side, not just your back side. He says, I can only show you my backside now. What is he saying that means? That means that until the coming of Mashiach, there's still, even though we're getting a trickle of it now, everything we're seeing is from the back side of wisdom. We can't see the front side of wisdom. If we could see the front side of wisdom, then we would have seen, then Chassidus would have come out 3,000 years ago. But it couldn't come out 3,000 years ago. It can only come out now. Because now we're beginning to see the front side. Now we're beginning to see the kavod of Hashem, seeing the glory of Hashem. ולא מבחינת התלהבות. וישיבו כי לא יראני אדם וחי וחייהן אינם רואים ואינם רואים. So he says, by Moshe Rabbeinu, so what did Moshe Rabbeinu have? So he says Moshe Rabbeinu only saw this when he passed away. That's why it says he was buried at Har Nevo. Right? What does Nevo mean? Nevo is Nun Bo. That he finally saw the 50th gate of understanding, of Iman, of the mother principle, only when he passed away. And what was that? I have to go. And what was that? So there's many things, but the simple meaning is that he saw the whole Mishnah. Because Nun and Mishnah is Moshe plus 50. So you got the 50 gates. So in any case, what he's saying here is that eventually the ban goes higher than the ma. And when it goes higher than the ma, then you're seeing things from a much higher perspective, and that's what Chassidus is. So,
Kabbalah is super.
Yeah, יש פה שקיות, לא? לא. יכול לקחת משם?